Great. Hello, everyone, again. Welcome to Dealing with Brexit Open Conversation. It's a monthly series of events to discuss in a formal space the challenges posed by Brexit. Before I start, I'd just like to remind you that we have captions available if you need them, so just click on the double C at the bottom to activate them. My name is Laetitia. I'm a project manager at Extracts. It's a Manchester-based development organization for the outdoor arts. And I'm a white woman in my late 20s. I've got shoulder length brown hair, and I'm wearing a green jumper today. So we're very delighted to welcome you today. We'll focus on incoming mobility today, so from Europe to the UK, but we have some sessions from the UK to Europe if that's what you're more interested in. So today we have two brilliant speakers joining us. We have Marie Faucher, who's Festival Administrator at GDF, and we have Pieter Smet, Technical Director at Laika. So before I pass on to them, I'll just explain briefly how the session is going to work. So we'll start by hearing from Marie, who will share her experience of inviting 9 European companies to GDF this summer. And we'll then hear from Pieter, who works for Laika, as I said, who performed at GDF this summer and had a few challenges bringing some of the set over. So this is this short introduction by all speakers is meant to kind of kick off the conversation. And after that, we'll have about 30-40 minutes all together to discuss. And if you have any questions, or if you want to share your own experience, you're welcome to jump in and ask your questions or share your experience. So feel comfortable. There's no silly questions. And yeah, I'll pass on over to Marie now.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Marie. I'm white. I've got a fringe brownish hair as well as brown eyes, and I'm wearing a white jumper today. I go with she and her as pronouns. Is that, do you want me to go through the experience now, or do we want Peter? Okay, all right, let's go. So I'm gonna be talking about our experience at Greenwich and Docklands International Festival, what it was like to bring international artists over in 2021. So COVID and Brexit are actually a funny mix when it comes to bringing international artists, in the sense that even though I'd love to be talking only about COVID, COVID masks a lot of the Brexit issues, or at least it did. In fact, Brexit had happened when countries were in lockdowns, one after the other, and there were no movement, hence this kind of compound effect. In 2021, things were reopening, both with lots of COVID restrictions on top of new rules due to Brexit, which were very unclear to me. Having said that, when it came to planning 2021, it felt at GDF like we weren't starting from the complete beginning unknown, as we managed to do a festival in 2020 where some steps of Brexit had started, and we did bring 3 international companies at the time. And it was kind of an appetizer to what it then became in 2021. So the first step we took as a festival led us to apply to become a permit-free festival. So that is bringing us back to last winter. So basically the idea was that as EU countries were treated as non-visa national countries, we would normally have gone for a tier 5 route under the points-based system for each European artist coming to the festival. So that would have been like following our usual process. However, we don't have the budget for this, knowing that each tier 5 visa costs roughly between £200 and £300 in total per person. So that's including certificate of sponsorship, the visa application itself, and the appointment at the visa application center. So if we would have done so, my calculation was like our total budget for the festival would have been increased by 10 to 15% just because of visa costs. So that was not an option, not affordable. So to get out of the points-based system, we applied to be part of the permit-free festival list. So I applied back in January, just before the deadline actually. And even though we were not fulfilling the conditions entirely, we got a positive answer. So that was great. It really felt like a big step, a relief at the time. But then the lack of clarity and the confusion regarding which visa artists should go for make me regret the time of the Tier 5 route, to be completely honest. Anyway, so the second step I kind of took was to seek for some help from an international mobility artist. It was kind of unclear to us which visa artists should go for. So either the permit PPE applied at the border, so permitted paid engagement visa applied at the border, or the one for which you applied in advance. It's the same, but essentially the costs are different, and it's a different process. Or third option, the standard visitor route. And it felt like the more research I was doing, the more I was confused and the less time I had to be doing the rest of my job. So, because on top of this, the rest of the job still needed doing. So I've got like 60-ish companies I deal with. That means like roughly 350 people coming. And because of these new issues related to Brexit and COVID, it really felt like the international artists all thought it was only 9 companies this year. It took pretty much all of my time, so quickly I felt the need to bring someone in, and I'd strongly recommend other festivals to do so. Like it is priceless to have someone whose time, at least with us, was dedicated to this and to this research, which is constantly moving. So we then made a plan together. We first intended to go for the PPE in advance. The reason for that we wanted to buy us some peace of mind and not to have to deal with it on festival days. So because festival days are extremely busy, as you all know, in the industry. However, we realized that this was impossible in most cases. Some companies we work with, they don't have the resources, not all of them have got a producer, they don't have enough time, and also it would have made them work through it at a time where they're touring elsewhere because of the timeline of it. And also we had some other difficulties, again, related to COVID here. For example, in Italy, it was impossible to get an appointment at the visa application center. In fact, between June and September, they had 2 slots available, for which it was like August, so that made the whole thing like impossible logistically. So we had a plan B that kind of worked alongside the plan A. The Israeli artist kept wanting to apply for in advance. So being flexible here is the key. So the plan B was to apply for the PP at the UK border. Wasn't my favorite option at the beginning, but worked fine at the end. This was recommended to us by a lawyer firm, which we contacted. And for this plan to work, artists had to come with a fair amount of paperwork on them. Some of it provided by us as a festival as a host, and some of it coming from their end. So this list included obviously the invitation letter, which was quite thick this year. So that included the UK government permit-free festival list as an appendix amongst other related documentation, proof of accommodation, COVID documentation, so that's proof of the day 2 PCR test booking, proof of vaccination, everyone came double vaxxed. Contract with the festival, proof of funds, very difficult to ask sometimes, but that was necessary. Their passports, which needed to be valid for the next 6 months, and their CV and anything basically showing that they earn their living in their own home country. So we asked artists to have them, all this paperwork, both printed and on their phone on arrival. Then came the time of the festival itself. So good news was like all international artists came in the UK and crossed the border fine. That was 50 artists in total. Some being asked some of the paperwork, some not. On the ground, challenges that were specifically related to Brexit were actually not that many. We did have some issues, for example, with for the show for Gravitas, the kit was in Germany. We could not find any company that could bring it over. There is an Israeli company, but the piece of kit that we needed was in Berlin, and people, like the companies, kept bailing one after the other after sending like outrageously expensive quotes. So we had to find a solution that was basically a friend of the artist who came, drove with her car, and we kind of treated her as an artist here, so did all of the paperwork for her too. And then the other main issue, I guess, is the fact we can't really plan what the queues, we couldn't really plan what the queues were going to be like. So for some artists, it was completely fine at the border, and some others arrived very, very late in the night just before performing, which is not a great experience at all for them, but also for us, very stressful. And then realistically, like underground, all the other issues we had, there were many of them, but they were more like related to COVID themselves. So I can talk about that later if people have got questions about it. But basically, all in all, in a nutshell, I'd say that I've always like thought, I mean, I'm French myself, been working both sides of the channel over the last couple of years. And I've always thought like bringing international artists in the UK, like we do ask them quite a lot, more than what it would take us to elsewhere, to be completely honest. I mean, that's my experience of it. I'm thinking of like the tax system here with the FEU8 application and the health and safety documentation that's needed, all the risk assessment and method statement, things that I'm not really used to. And then on top of that comes Brexit and COVID. And I felt like he added lots of difficulty for them, and I felt for them, so tried to support as much as we could. There's also only that much we can do from our end. And also, so yeah, in a nutshell, I say it all comes down to a lot of flexibility and resource, so time-wise and budget-wise. That is my experience of 2021 on that matter.
Thanks, Marie. That's really, really useful to know. I hope it doesn't feel overwhelming for people who've not gone through it yet. But thank you. That's really useful. And maybe we could hear from Pieter, the experience of the company. What was it like on your side?
Thank you, Marie. First of all, I want to confirm that without the help of the festival, we would not manage in coming over. But as she told, for us, it was no problem to cross the border. We were well prepared because of the help of the festival and Mary. And yes, we all had our book with us with all the administration, but because we traveled by group, I think we were two teams of 6 people. Only the first person at the border has to explain everything, and then has to say, and those are 5 similar situations, and then the border guys say, okay, in that case, and then take all of our administration, and we could have done all the stamps in one, so that went very well. But I think it's very important to do the preparation well, so because you're not always that luck. It really depends on the person who is in that small box of glass at the border, who wants to cooperate and understands the situation. So thank you, Marie, for helping us in the preparation. I think if there are more questions about that, she's the specialist, certainly, about it. From our side, we had help over there, but what I want to talk about, our challenge was also because UK is not longer a part of the European Union, is to bring our sets and materials over the border. Balsam, the performance was invited, is a truck performance, as we say. So we travel by truck. A truck we bring our own. We drive our own as well. And different than the years before, now we had to work again. We did it 100 years ago, but now we have to work again with an ATA carnet. It's not strange to us, but people who are not familiar with it, it brings a little more preparation in advance, because you have to mention what materials you have with you. You have to formalize it with the, I think, I don't know if England has it, but with us, it's the Chamber of Commerce who deals with it, the ATA carnet. So I had to go there with a list. I also put some photographs. I made a dossier of the set we bring. Everything went well in that matter. Just what makes Laika special in its performances is we not only travel by with a set, we also travel with food, because one of our strengths is to make performances where the senses are inspired. So most of the time with our international performances, we have to bring food who is invented, who is prepared by my colleague, who is a chef cook, who is a chef cuisine, who invents especially for that performance his food. And that was a huge challenge, because a set is simple. You can describe something. Electrical material has a serial number. You take a photograph. So when you're at the border, somebody can check it. And I don't know what the right word is, but in the import-export story, it's clear. But the moment you bring in food is prepared with us and will be eaten by an audience, there is something that makes a difference. And in that matter, in Belgium, we went to a lot of border people to help us, but they could never give us the right answer to it. Luckily, we had a very good relationship with the festival, so most of the things were prepared in England itself, but the last things we could not bring in an official way. And we had two solutions I came up with, I think like 2 weeks before we had to leave. And one of the solutions could be that people in person took it with them by train and tell to the border that it's for own use. And then we would fell out of import-export story. But it was too much, because we had we were lucky we could play several performances at the festival. We could not, it would mean that everybody had one case only with food for themselves. But you know, I said we traveled by group, so the border would think that this is not correct. And the solution we did eventually was to put it in the set. I mentioned it in the set, like without picture, but as I don't know how to say it in English, but I described it like it could be everything or anything. So the moment we would have a checkup of the cargo, our truck driver and technician could explain that it's a part of the set and it will be consumed. So there we took the risk in being controlled, but we never found a proper solution for it. But in terms of cargo bringing to UK, it takes a lot of time to make the photographs, to describe it, to go to the Chamber of Commerce, but it has a cost. But I would say honestly that if everything is well prepared, we had no issues at border in bringing the cargo to the UK. Another thing that was for us we had to be aware of is there are a lot of trucks coming to England and have to wait at the border. The border time was really something we had to schedule in. Normally we try to keep our schedules very tight because to lower the cost and hotel nights and stuff. But now we really had 1 day extra in case of border, how do you say it? In case we had to wait longer than provided at the border. But also there we were lucky that it went very well. I think because there were so many trucks, the border officers leave them more and more through, because it's hallucinating the images just when Brexit was on. How many French, Dutch, Belgian trucks were waiting at the border to get in the channel. But luckily for us, it went well.
Great, thank you so much, Peter. That's really interesting to hear your experience, and great to hear that you had you have one more thing to say. Go on.
I want to add one more thing, that because the festival invited more than one Belgian company to play, and the company who was also invited is a friendly company to us, living in the same building we are. We could also prepare things by two, and we are two different companies with different needs, but working together brought us well over there and back again, because we shared our transport in the return. lower the cost.
It's great to hear. Yeah, so support is key for the festival or other companies, I guess, is the main takeaway here. But yeah, now I guess we can just open the floor to questions or comments. I don't know if any festivals have any experience or any questions, or some artists. Does anyone? Sylvia, you've got a question.
I'm not a festival, I'm a company, but I just thanks for that. And I wanted to ask Peter, whether when you say they do the check at the border of the ACA carnet, is that actually at the border? Because I'd heard that you had to go via a different place to get these carnets stamped. Is that, yeah, and hence like a massive detour, is that true?
Good to know is that we travel by train from Belgium, from Brussels. We have we can take the channel, it is, by train, and in order, you first leave Belgium, so you first, besides COVID check and all kind of stuff, which is hopefully temporarily, you leave the Belgian ground, and then you meet the officer of the UK. So, but it's actually in the train station itself. It's I think it's similar when you take the plane. It's really a step-by-step thing when the border of Belgium let you go, but there is no check in administration. But then you meet the English border, and they check the paperwork, and they do it again when you're through the channel. So the moment you come in, just after you leave the train, then you have them again. And I think it was the big checkup was in Belgium by the UK border officers, and there we had to prove what we went, why we are traveling to UK, and there we in advance we had everybody had his passports with him, and you just have to gain that stamp. But with all the documentation we had with us, like the proof of the festival itself, I think also the where we would stay, which hotel, how many nights, it was all well prepared. And the moment they read it and captured it, it was no problem. And when you go back, I think you cross another border, the French border as well. So it were two borders, but they did not check the paperwork of coming out. It was the COVID thing that they were checking. It's not in this process. But yes, they check, and it's at the same place. It was in the station itself, and I think it's also similar when you take the plane.
Because you said to add extra time to allow for all these checks, but if you book a train or a plane, let's say, how do you calculate that? Do you just get there a lot in advance, basically, and then
yes,
yeah?
We were there 2 hours in advance, but we had company. We were with 6 or with 12 people, so it's amusing. It's like going on voyage together. It's but yes, we scheduled it in, but it went with us. It went really fluid. But in case of, you never know.
Andrew, you've got a question.
Yeah, hi, Peter, Marie. Do you know if it is different if an artist is driving their own vehicle? So in the case where, so for example, at Hat Fair, we might have 2 artists who are driving their own car and they've got their equipment in the car or truck. How would that situation be similar or different?
Yeah, it is different in the sense that I find even less. So we had most artists coming that way, or at least one truck driver, and then some others flying in or training it. But that happened to most of our companies, and like actually, yes, it's different in the sense that it can go. My experience that it can. Don't want to sound too negative, sorry, but it's even less predictable. It can take. I've heard up to like 24 hours. It did not happen. The worst that was for the Stoker Teatro, and they spend like a solid 10 hours, I think. You have to go through, basically my understanding, I haven't done it myself, but ask them to explain a little bit. They have to go through a different line, which the UK is an island, and we don't do all of our food here. So the gear, the equipment line is impressive. It goes fast. They said it goes faster than what you think it would, but it still is hours. Some others also like just blacked it and said they didn't know, and that was fine. When they got stopped, then my understanding that it's pretty messy. It's hard to plan. But again, it was only, in a way, only 9 companies. It's not quite enough to like bring conclusions, you know. I think it's gonna take us longer as like an industry for things to smooth down a little bit and to know a bit more. But I'd advise it was tough for the Italian artists that they basically slept 3 hours and then went on site, and that was not a nice experience. So I'd advise like add an extra day if possible. That's super hard to budget. If not a few hours, or just hope for the best. It's so hard. I was like thinking, oh, maybe Friday nights are more busy. Doesn't work like that. It's not like maybe looking at statistics. So I don't know, but time is really hard to manage. I mean,
they were pretty clued up. So would you advise that they do arrive, if possible, the day before?
I would, if there is money to be able to budget that, definitely, yeah. Okay. It's just peace of mind for them as well, and to avoid potential like injuries inside or whatever. It is stressful. It depends also whether like sometimes we had like actual performers driving, and because it's so complicated to bring anyone in, that kind of reduce the number of people they're bringing as well, right? So sometimes producers staying or company managers staying back home, and that exhausts them even more. So it depends on what the company feels like doing. Obviously, at the end, it's up to them. But I would advise, if possible, an extra day. Everyone sleeps nicely before that. Yeah.
Lizzie, any other question?
Yeah, I don't know if this is a silly question, but we'll find out. The permitted paid engagement route, I thought you had to do that at the border. Is it possible to do it in advance? We've got someone coming over to us in February, which we'll need to do something about.
Yeah, it is indeed. We've done it for a few of our artists. It is, yeah. I can send you the link for that. It's got costs, as opposed to if you do it at the border, it's free. But the great thing that you've actually got the visa on your passport. But what the lawyer said to us is like, even that won't like absolutely like make like it at the end is done to the border officer person. It will always be, but having that is make it go way faster. Because it's so much less likely that they're gonna check the paperwork, all of that. It is, if I remember well, is £81 or something like that, and you can ask, I think it's 3 months before. It's the same paperwork. It's just they've got, depends on the country, that some countries have got to go to the visa application center, which also sometimes has a cost, sometimes hasn't. But I can send you a link to that. In fact, I'm going to do that now.
Thanks. Done.
Yeah, thanks both for that. It was really interesting. I just wanted to talk a little bit to our experience as a festival this year. Obviously, Inside Out Dorset ran this summer in September. We were due to have 5 French companies and a German company. Due to COVID restrictions, unfortunately, our French companies, we ended up not bringing them over. A lot of them were at the time either only single vaccinated or unvaccinated, and that caused various different issues. You know, I think it's probably Marie's experience as well. That, you know, you work with circus companies. There are a lot of young people in circus companies, and they're at the bottom of the list on the vax at the moment. So, but we went down a different route. We looked at PPE, but we actually became a sponsor organisation we felt as a actively pro-European organisation that's constantly working with European artists. It was a long-term benefit to us, and it works out so much more easily than we expected it to in terms of paperwork. There was obviously the initial fee, which was a few £100s. I can't remember exactly how much it was to become the organisation, and a fair bit of paperwork at that stage. But in terms of artists, and I think this speaks primarily because we work with European artists rather than the broader range maybe that GDIF are working with. So for people coming from any country that's a member of the Council of Europe social contract, I think there's about 26 European countries, the fees are normally reduced, so it's down to £55. And we then discovered as well that fee is per company, it's not per individual. So it was we only paid one fee for the company, even if that was a company of, you know, a brass band of 12 or 2 acrobats, it was £55. We created a pro forma that we used to gather all that information again that Marie talked about, which is the hardest part, especially if you're a festival administrator, is, you know, it's drawing all that information together to get that. When we then spoke, we managed to get through to the immigration department, and they actually said that information was kind of unlikely to be needed, and we found that it wasn't. We sent all the artists prepared with that. The only question that the international artists who did come over got asked was, what is a T5 temporary worker visa? And that was the delay, while the immigration officer then had to go off and ask a manager what that was and to let them through. But they were never asked for any of the additional information that we were told they would be asked for. In terms of the process of getting the visas as well, once you're registered as a sponsor organization, you literally input all the data that you've got, and you get a code comes back on return, you know, hitting return, and that's your visa code for those artists. So there are a lot to do, you know, there are different options out there, and I just kind of wanted to, you know, I think for us, we found COVID and the COVID travel restrictions far harder this time than, say, what we expected from Brexit and those restrictions.
Thanks for sharing that, Dom. That's really useful. Yeah, we do hear that the sponsorship route can be more reliable because you don't have the stress at the entry of having to convince the officer that they should let you in. So a few different. Marie, why did you go for the permitted pen engagement and not the sponsorship or free?
I guess I wasn't fully aware of the reduced fee to start with. The thing is that I'm thinking of going back to tier 5 for next year. So thanks for sharing that, Dom. That's very encouraging. I believe, now I might be wrong because I've never done it under the new system, but I believe tier 5 is true that reduced fee only if they travel together, which is, I think that doesn't happen much to us because we are a festival at the end of the summer, and sometimes, a lot of the time, people come from their holidays. So, but I may be wrong, but that's what I read following some post research that I actually did recently, following a chat I had with Katie, who was here as well. Thanks. So I wasn't fully aware to start with. And what I'm sure of is that as a permit-free festival, you don't even have to ask for a certificate of sponsorship anymore if you follow the points-based system. So that's another £21 per head saved. But yeah, the tier 5, in a way, tier 5, it does feel more relevant because it's like you're a festival, you're hosting artists and you take responsibility for them. Essentially, it means a different thing than a PPE where they still are responsible to prove about their funds and stuff like that. Whereas we take responsibility as a festival when we invite them under tier 5. It feels fairer and more appropriate. But I was put off by the costs, and maybe there was some misinformation, or maybe things have changed since then.
Yeah, I think the other thing to draw in from what you said earlier about not being representative from the artists, I think this year is not representative at all, because what we haven't experienced is where, you know, all our artists came over to play our festival and then went off again. We haven't been in a situation where they're doing a 3 festival tour and then who is responsible for that visa, who is their sponsor organization, and how do you monitor that and all the admin that comes with that. So again, yeah, there are problems ahead, I can see, or challenges, let's say, not problems.
Rose,
none of it is actually perfect, but yeah, that happens all the time as well. You're right.
Hi, yeah, I've just got another question. I think I asked it last time and I still wasn't clear on it. I thought that the sponsorship certificate was only if you weren't paying them, for example. They were coming, they were performing, but it wasn't for a fee. So we would be using, at the Hat Fair, we would use them for our buskers because we support them, but we don't pay them. But if we had an international company come over who we were paying a fee to, then we couldn't use the certificate of sponsorship on that route. Is that... Can somebody clarify?
Yeah, that's well possible. That rings a bell. Sorry, we don't have any artists that we don't pay for, so I don't know. Yeah, basically the reason why we want visa, I mean, from our end, is only because we pay them. Otherwise, I don't know what it would be like otherwise, to be honest. I haven't looked down that route too much, sorry, but yeah, that's one of the core reasons why we need a visa.
I think
so.
Katie, you were trying to clarify that, right?
No, you did remind me. No, I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, you did ask me that question last time. And we're still working on the FAQ document, but I do just happen to have it open here. So I was searching for it whilst you were asking that. And we did get some clarity back on that. And I was just trying to look for that answer. So I will post it in, but I'll post the question and answer in. But essentially it says, it was my understanding for certificate of sponsors that we could only use them for now. Was that we could now use these for unpaid creatives only, and all paid artists which have to come through the permitted paid engagement route. That was your question, wasn't it? Was it that one? Sorry, I can't watch screens open.
Sorry, yes, it is.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so I mean, the answer, I mean, I will post it in the chat. A migrant of any nationality wishing to make use of the permitted paid engagement exemption for visitors must be an established professional artist, performer or musician. If your performers fit this description, they may enter the UK as visitors without the need for sponsorship and receive payment for performing at your festival. They will need to be restricted by the 1 month entry and need to see a border official, obviously, rather than the e-gate. If the description of professional performer does not apply to receive payment as a visitor, the festival would require inclusion on the PFF list, so permit-free festival list. I'll post it in the chat. And I mean, I don't know if it's useful for the room as well, but I can circulate. We did have that came out of a session that we had with the immigration solicitors, and we did record it, so I can send it to Letitia afterwards, who can then circulate it because it's not quite. We're working on our website, so I can't share the link to it, but I can circulate it to you all afterwards, where they do go through. And we did, and a number of people asked a lot of questions throughout the session, so I can share that and I think that might answer some of the questions that are flying around the room today as well. So I can circulate that, and I'll put that Q&A in the chat now as well.
Yeah, it's a really useful recording. It talks you through all the options and what they mean. So I think for anyone who has that question about specific routes, definitely watch that. Any other questions? Barnaby, yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentations. They're so helpful, and it's all really, really helpful. I guess I'm just wondering if anybody has any experience of where an artist was denied entry, or and whether there's anything, to be learned from that in terms of things that we might, miss, or just things we have to be extra kind of careful about. Like, is it just a random thing where, you might come to a person at the border who's just decides, even though you've got all the information there. I guess I'm just trying to think about risk mitigation and making sure that if we go down that route of applying at the border, that, we don't end up in that situation of not having the artist that we'd expected to have. Has that ever happened to anybody?
Yeah, it did happen to us twice. Two different circumstances. Once was way before COVID. It was a non-visa nationals. The person was Chilean, coming for community engagement visit, had just been hired for the project, didn't have any time to start visa application. Chilean person based in Paris, in France. what had happened is that yeah, at the border, so we didn't do any paperwork, but they weren't specifically paid for that, needed to perform. It was like a visit. It was still a stage of basically negotiating, like we weren't sure whether the show was gonna happen. So, but they did not let them go through because the person mentioned that she was coming ahead of a festival, as in to work, whereas the only way for them to have, for this situation to have worked, have been like basically they're coming at tourists just doing a meeting, which is different. We fixed it on the day by talking to the person on the phone, but that was a hard situation. Turns out I was also with the lawyer at the time who was in the room with me. It's also because we had the time, it wasn't the festival itself, so we had the time to basically go to the airport. That was down to that. And the other time where it happened is this year, actually, a story I haven't told here, but one of the PPE that applied for in advance for one of the Israeli artists, one of the visa got denied. So we came up with a plan B, saw the lawyers in between again. That was like 5 days before the festival, extremely stressful situation. And the reason why the visa was not granted was apparently, it was an excuse. That's what we then got told. The excuse was used that a document was not translated properly. I don't know why did they not, that person did not have any criminal record. There was nothing. I talked to them then on the ground because they managed to come via asking at the border. Obviously, when they arrived at the border, they got taken into a room where they had to reprove everything, show all of their paperwork for that person specifically. And we had some, my colleague with like the international mobility specialist went to the airport as well, just in case. She at the end was not needed, but it was, yeah. At the end, it was fine, but it's good to allocate some potential time for this to happen. I don't know why in both circumstances. The first one was a bit of a mix of miscommunication, and like it was a rushed visit that was planned. The second one, I don't understand, because 3 people applied and one did not get. It was the exact same paperwork, and none of them had any criminal record or anything, or any history of having tried coming in the UK and not left, or because those things happen as well. Like, but no, that wasn't the case. So I don't know, apart from allowing some time for it to exist, I think. But in a way, maybe because we asked in advance, that was even more dodgy. Maybe, I don't know, in a way, maybe asking just at the border is less risky. The thing is that the guidelines are very, very scary. They say all of that, but then on the ground, very few artists got asked stuff. So we want to like get our back, obviously, but it's like, yeah, on the ground, it feels easier unless, yeah, that happens. I don't know, that's the tricky situation, yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, Marie. I think we've got not long now, but there's one question where we do get asked a lot by artists and festivals is how to kind of think about the contract and who's responsible for paying what in terms of, visa and carnet. Is it the company that should include that in their budget, or is the festival responsibility to pay for this? So like, how did you arrange all those extra costs between GDF and Laika?
Between GDF and all international companies, I changed that when I came into post. I budget for it now. I just I do, unless I really don't know, and it's like a company that is based somewhere. Now it's not happening anymore with Brexit anymore. No, we budget for it. We ask as part of the negotiation and the quote, and then we pay for it.
Great. We have time for one last question if anyone has.
I mean, we don't pay for it, we refund them, which is something to take into account when they do the FEU application as well, the tax one.
Do you mean that's not part of the artist fee, right?
Yeah, that's not part of the artist fee, because they have to pay for other company, but then we refund them.
Right. Right. Did you have your hand up, Barnaby?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on this chat conversation about the certificate of sponsorships, because just maybe it's just me, but I'm confused about the answer to the question and how it answers the question, because the question was if certificate of sponsorships was only if that could only be used now for unpaid, and therefore if you were being paid you had to go down the PPE route. And the answer is doesn't, I think, speak to that exactly. Like, is it now a requirement to go down the PPE route if you're being paid? You can't do the sponsorship route.
I think does the last sentence answer that as well? If this does not apply either, payment would only be permitted in the case of sponsorship as a temporary worker. You are permitted, but I'll have to look into it. I can follow it up definitely with Letitia. I can share the whole FAQ document. Actually, I was thinking that as I posted it in, that took up an awful lot of space. I will share the whole FAQ document with you, but I'll read it again then and see if it doesn't. And if it doesn't, I'll add something to it.
Okay, thanks,
Thank
Katie.
you.
If you could send that document and the link to the webinar, I can share it with everyone.
Yeah. But so let's make sure I've got your question right, Barnaby. So you what do you not think was answered there? That it wasn't, we're registered sponsors and have previously sponsored. So
if a sponsorship, sponsorship by a licensed organization is only for unpaid artists, this question is asking.
Well,
if you're being paid,
I suppose, what they're saying, but what they say at the end is payment could only be permitted in the case of sponsorship as a temporary worker. So it's the temporary worker sponsorship, then payment could be permitted in that case. So
got it.
Yeah, okay.
So payment could be permitted, but only as a temporary worker.
Yeah, I'll make sure that it's clear in the FAQs. If it's not reading very well, then that's a really good thing to know, and I'll just make sure that it is when I circulate it. Because I know as well, Rose, there was another question that you asked as well. So there's another question, another answer for you in there as well. Sorry about the confusion, guys.
Great,
thank you. I think we're running out of time, but thank you everyone for attending today. Thank you, Marie and Peter and everyone else for sharing their experience today. We'll run another session in December and we'll try and do a focus on Spain, so from the UK to Spain. So if you have any experience or if you have any, if you're interested in talking to Spain, feel free to join or email us to share your experience. And in the meantime, we'll try and do our best to carry on supporting our arts professional to navigate the challenges of Brexit. So feel free to get in touch with us if you have any questions. I think that's it. Thank you to all of you for attending today, and we hope to see you again next month. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.